one-to-one support that focuses on skill development. So as opposed to helping students with content, we're interested in helping students with all those skills that you need to do to succeed in university, whether it's time management, organizational skills, note-taking, and so forth. So today what I want to do, I started Study Spot about 17 years ago, and when I did, I didn't have kids. I wasn't a parent. And I would often get brought into conversations from parents basically seeking my advice on whether they're doing the right thing. And the truth was I was uncomfortable with it. I felt I didn't have the credibility to give advice, parenting advice. And to some extent, I still don't, really. I now have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I know kind of what's worked for them. But kids and the relationship that kids have with their parents is so different and unique that I'm not saying today that what you're going to learn, you're just going to take and start applying and everything's going to be great. It's not how it works. But what I hope is that I'm able to talk about some concepts and some issues and some way of maybe rethinking the way you support your child at home, and that will, I don't know, just get you thinking a little bit about the way you currently do it, if you're really involved, if you're not involved enough, and when you get involved, what you might want to do that allows you to be productive. Both the relationship, but also just, am I helping the right way? Okay? We had a lot of people last time, so we couldn't really field questions, but with this group, if there's questions that come about in the middle, I'm fine with answering those. And so what I kind of want to get across today are the following. I don't know if you guys know about mindsets and Carol Dweck's theory. I'm going to explain a little bit about why they're so important to me, or why it's so important to me, why she is so important to me. And then I want to talk about how we can take the concept of mindsets and what we're trying to accomplish as parents, as educators, as coaches, and focus on a few different areas where you can actually start to make an impact potentially. One area is in looking at results in context. Another is in the goals that you set for your son or your daughter. And also in terms of when you're brought in to help, when your child's like eliciting your advice and your feedback, how to shift the conversation away from content support and into skill-based, process-based support. So I'm going to start with, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put this. So Carol Dweck, does anyone know the concept of mindsets? If anyone come across it? It's kind of funny, because when I first started hearing about it, which was in the 90s, it wasn't even mindsets yet. She hadn't got there yet. It took her like 20 years to go from her initial research to the current theory. And the theory right now is very popular. It's very mainstream. If you search it, you'll find it all over the place. And it's very fascinating. So what I wanted to do, instead of just telling you about mindsets, I wanted to bring you sort of from where she started and how she got to the theory, which is really cool because the theory reflects, and how she got there kind of reflects the whole journey of growth mindset, which I'll explain in a bit. So what she did is she took students and she brought them in and she was interested in how failure would impact motivation and so forth. So she brought them in and she had them do puzzles. And the task was rigged so that all the initial puzzles everyone could solve. But then she introduced a puzzle that could not be solved. And she just was interested in what happened. And what happened was that she was able to identify two very different behavioral approaches that kids had. You'll see this in your kids. This won't be surprising to you, I'm sure. What struck her was just how different these patterns were. Okay? So on the one side, on the left, on your left, she noticed that some students, when experiencing failure, dealt with it in a really positive way. They generally became curious about why they couldn't do this puzzle. They engaged in positive self-talk, like, that's weird, I can do this, what's going on? I gotta try harder, or whatever. They were very persistent in the task. It was like they embraced the challenge that the failure identified. And so she called that behavior task-oriented behavior. And then there were other students that were literally as opposite as could be. They became negative when they experienced failure. They got very frustrated. and they made negative comments about the task, how stupid it is, or what have you. They gave up easily. And when given free time at the end of this little investigation, the kids who sort of showed this task-oriented behavior went back and they tackled the puzzle they couldn't do. The kids over here, the performance-oriented kids, either didn't do a puzzle at all and just sat there, or they did the puzzles they could do already. And it's fascinating because those children experienced the exact same thing in the context of that investigation. The same number of successful puzzles, followed by one unsolvable puzzle. And so the researcher, Carol Dweck, started to think, okay, wait, we got something. There's something going on here, and I'm really interested in finding out what it is. We know that their behavior is different, but what does that mean? And what she thought is that it seemed to her that what she was getting at was that it was like the kids had completely different goals when they started the task. Even though they were just told to solve the puzzle, it was like they thought differently about it, the nature of it. And so she noticed that some kids were interested, it seemed, in just learning. They relished the opportunity to improve, right? So she thought that the goals that those students had were task-oriented goals. This, by the way, happened over years, right? This is not research in the same study. This literally happened over years. In contrast to the other group, it seemed that they were more concerned about avoiding failure or showing that they were successful. That was like the goal of the task for them. It's almost like they wanted to appear smart or not to appear like they're struggling. And she said that she coined at the time that those students were clearly wrapped up in the performance of the task. To give you an example sort of what this might look like, and by the way, one of the flaws of any theory, this one's no exception, as much as I love it, is it oversimplifies things, right? So no student we work with, no kid I've ever met, I also coach volleyball, no kid I've coached, ever is one or the other. It's not how it works. They're constantly in a state of flux between one or the other. Sometimes they show a lot of performance-oriented goals in some domains. Like you might have a very performance-oriented athlete, but they might be a task-oriented student. So it's not quite so clear-cut as the theory would say, but on the other hand, these are what we're getting at is sort of almost styles of personality that kids have, approaches that they take. But to sort of highlight what a performance-oriented goal versus a task-oriented goal is, let's say that you and I were going to be engaged in a debate. You and I got together and we started arguing about something, but a friendly argument. At the same time, I might want to win the argument, which is a performance goal, but I might also be interested in learning your perspective and, I don't know, broadening my own horizons, which is sort of a task-oriented goal. I'm trying to grow from that interaction. So even though I might have both of those goals kind of floating around in there, one generally will win out. And I might be the guy that simply wants to yell you down and I want to win the argument primarily, which is what my wife would say. But, and that's the same things going on in school all the time with kids. Okay? So of course, Dweck wasn't done here because this doesn't answer the question. This just begs the other question, which is, okay, fine. They have different goals, but how does that happen? And so that's where she got into the concept of mindsets. Like others before her, and certainly like the way I think, she believed that you couldn't understand anything about someone if you didn't understand the way they thought about the world, their theory of the world, literally how things work. If you knew that, then you could start to make sense of their behavior. And so she started asking kids questions about intelligence. What is it? How does it work? Is it stable? Is it a fixed trait? Is it something you're born with? Does it change? What role does intellect play in school achievement? A lot or a little? Does it depend? So she started going down this road. Another question, actually a big one, is the nature of knowledge. Does knowledge generally come to us quickly or not at all? So some people believe that knowledge is, you either get it quickly or you won't get it. Or some people think that knowledge takes time to acquire. It's something that you might have to struggle with, and maybe for a long time before you truly understand it. I don't even know what the right answer is, what the truth is, although I now have a sense. But back then I didn't know, but it didn't matter to me, because I kind of know what I wanted to believe. which was the effort, practice, deliberate practice, the focus you took, that's going to really make a big difference. And to me, intellect is something that surely is malleable, surely can grow, surely can develop. I have to believe it. I mean, I work with kids all the time, stressing that exact thing. But not all kids do. She found that some kids did believe, on the left, that intelligence is malleable, it can improve, it can develop, it can grow. So that success has more to do with your approach than how smart you are. And that learning often takes a lot of time, patience, persistence, practice. And that was coined the growth mindset. And if you search growth mindset, you find links galore all over the place to it. Come on. In contrast, she also found that some students believe that intelligence is a static trait. You're born with it. It doesn't change very much. And importantly, it's also really involved in how well you do in school. So not only is it fixed, but it's important. And generally, that learning, when it happens, will generally happen quickly. As parents, as educators, I believe our number one task, more than any other task possible when it comes to school, is to help our kids develop a healthy growth mindset. Our kids have to learn that that's the way the world works, because that is the way the world works. Plus, it leads to all these really good, healthy, adaptive responses as well. So, when I heard Dweck's theory and sort of followed it along there in the 90s, it literally changed the way I thought about everything. Changed the way I interacted with kids in all the different settings that I interacted in them with. Changed the way I felt about being a parent and what my job was, what my responsibility was. It has impacted me every day that I interact with other people. And what's cool about it is now it's kind of mainstream. The second session, there was actually a talk going on. I couldn't go because I was doing this one, on mindsets and math. Yeah, you guys, I wanted to go to that, so maybe we'll talk after, because I was a bit disappointed that. I will, I'll definitely. Yeah. It's just so powerful to me. I'm going to show you a little bit, and it's also interesting because I caught the last probably 45 minutes of Dr. Clinton's talk today. And a lot of what I'm getting at, she introduced as well, especially if you remember when she put the sort of brains on the screen and talked about how the different environments literally build connection, neural connections in the brains. Like literally your brain changes with interaction. So I've got a little short video. Do you guys know Khan Academy? You guys have been across it? It's like a, yeah. So Sal Khan, the guy who started that, used to be a Dweck student. So they work closely together. And Carol Dweck's Mindsets, our Khan Academy has a section about it, and this is one of the videos for it. So this is a video of actually Sal Khan speaking. I was having internet problem before, so. Oh, this works so well. Can you see it up there?
Yeah,
Yep.
see it.
I know what he's saying right now, and it's really good. It's too bad you can't hear it. So it's okay, it's not, you can all